It's Imposter Syndrome question day, and this is one that I was sent by somebody who's going to be attending a keynote that I'm actually doing in a couple of weeks. So one of the things I often do with a keynote at a conference or in an organisation when I give a talk is I send out my Imposter Syndrome assessment quiz beforehand, so everybody gets a feel for whether they're running Imposter Syndrome, which of the 3 hidden drivers is the most important for them, and they get a personalised action plan. So we hit the ground running. Link for that is below, by the way. If you've not done it, make sure you go and do it. And this person, in that quiz, you got a chance to ask me a question, and I answer them all as far as I can, yeah? And somebody asked me today, I'm going to read this, how do I get rid of anxiety in work calls about speaking up with an idea or talking through plans and ideas, as sometimes it's felt, even with people I know really well. So here's what's happening there. The unconscious mind, the bit that's running the show, has triggered the fight, flight, freeze response, the sympathetic nervous system, the fear response. That fires off negative thoughts that fire off biochemical reactions in the body that create the emotions that feed more thoughts, and this impacts the actions that we take. So when we're running that kind of, you can feel the spotlight coming towards you, whether it's in a room, whether it's on Zoom or Teams, and when it hits you, it fires off that cascade. What happens in that moment is the body's getting ready to go to war with the question, or to run from it, or to freeze and pretend you can't hear it. It diverts some of the blood flow from the prefrontal cortex in the brain that has your brilliant ideas and does your logical, rational, creative type thinking, to the primal part that only cares about instinctive survival. So this is why it makes us hold back. Firstly, it means it's harder to concentrate, it's harder to retain information, process information, to come up with those ideas, but it makes us hold back, to flinch, to be smaller, in order to stay safe. So when I'm working with clients, or if somebody's on my Imposter Syndrome Bootcamp program, what I recommend they do in that situation is we need to reset the fight, flight, freeze response. The simplest way you can do that is a breathing technique that I've put a link to below this video. Okay, because I don't want to do it on the video because you might be listening to this if you're driving or doing something in the background, and I'm going to be asking you to close your eyes to do the technique. But when we use that particular breathing technique to press pause, it puts us in neutral. Then, once we're in neutral, the body and the mind are open to thinking different thoughts. The bit of you that automatically moved the blood flow to the primal part of the brain goes, red alert over. The blood flow goes back to the prefrontal cortex that does the brilliant thinking. You are then in a position to choose a different action. You've calmed the anxiety, the worry, the what-if thoughts, the catastrophizing, that self-talk that ends up with us not wanting to speak out. You're feeling calm and grounded when you've used this technique. Then you are able to choose a different action or a different thought that supports you. So this is a technique that's really useful in that moment to be able to go from self-talk being really destructive into neutral, like changing gear in a car and shifting direction. It works at a neurological level and at a physiological level with the fight, flight, freeze hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, for example, in the body. But it also is part of the strategies that I teach for neuroplasticity, to be able to rewire the neural pathways in the brain, to be able to rewire the filters in the brain, so that over time, and it doesn't take that long, you can start turning your inner critic into a genuine cheerleader without pretending. So the more you play with this, the easier it becomes, and the more you are breaking the link between the trigger of, I've got to speak up with an idea or a plan, through to the, so I won't, or I'll tone it down, I'll make it more beige, make it more palatable. It allows you to create new thought habits that support new behavioural habits. The rest of the work I do on Imposter Syndrome, we go that lot deeper, we look at what is the root cause, what was the real driver for this anxiety, how can we release that, resolve that, clear that in a healthy and happy way, so you don't actually need the surface level symptom of the anxiety or the worry or that holding back anymore. But in that moment, use the pause technique, linked below this video. Practice that, play with that when you don't need it. And then when you do, if you do, It's there for you. It's second nature. You've got what in the world of yoga teaching we call a body memory, a muscle memory for the technique. So that is the first thing I would suggest for somebody who's struggling with that particular problem. Go and play with the pause technique, and then make sure that you've done my research-backed questionnaire, the quiz, to get your imposter syndrome score and your personalised action plan so you can start turning it around by the end of the day today. I hope you found that useful, okay? Subscribe if you have, please share it with people, hit the little bell thing so you get notifications when a new video is published, and I'll be back soon with another imposter syndrome question.